there is a terrifying possibility that almost no one considers. What if the greatest illness of our time isn't in the body, but in consciousness itself? Not because consciousness becomes sick, but because it becomes forgotten. Think about this. Every morning, millions of people wake up, check their phones, rush through breakfast, drive to work, answer emails, solve problems, return home exhausted, distract themselves with another screen, and fall asleep only to repeat the exact same cycle tomorrow. Most of them call this living. But is it? Or is it simply surviving with remarkable efficiency? Here's the unsettling part. If someone asked you to point to the exact moment you stopped truly experiencing your own life, you probably couldn't, because it didn't happen overnight. It happened gradually, one unconscious decision at a time, one suppressed emotion after another, one compromise after the next, until eventually, the person looking back at you in the mirror felt strangely familiar, yet strangely distant. What if that feeling isn't depression? What if it isn't burnout? What if it is something far more fundamental? What if you've spent years becoming everything the world expected, while quietly abandoning the person you were meant to become? This question lies at the heart of a remarkable idea, explored in the chapter Healing from a Cosmic Message by Gilberto Franzoni. The chapter suggests that what we call healing does not begin inside the body. It begins the moment consciousness reconnects with itself. At first, that sounds poetic, until you begin looking at your own life. Have you ever noticed how suffering has a strange habit of repeating itself? Different relationship, same emotional wound, different job, same frustration, different city, same loneliness, different dream, same emptiness after achieving it. Why do most people answer that life is unfair? Psychology offers another possibility. Perhaps we don't experience life as it is. We experience life as we are. Carl Jung believed that until the unconscious becomes conscious, it quietly directs our lives while we mistake its influence for fate. Think about how radical that idea really is. It means your future may not be created by your circumstances. It may be created by patterns you don't even know exist. Imagine walking through a house you've lived in your entire life. Every room feels familiar. You know where every door leads. Then one day, someone points toward a bookshelf. You move it aside and discover an entire hidden staircase. The house never changed. Your awareness did. Perhaps self-knowledge works exactly like that. Perhaps there has always been another level beneath the life you believed you understood. The chapter proposes that human existence unfolds through different dimensions. The physical body is only the outermost expression. Behind it exists an energetic dimension composed of thoughts, emotions, memories, psychological tendencies, and vital force. Beyond even that lies consciousness itself, the deepest level of our being. Whether you interpret this spiritually or psychologically is less important than the question it raises. If the body is the final expression, where does the story actually begin? Picture a tree in the middle of a forest. One morning, its leaves begin turning brown. Most people would immediately focus on the branches, perhaps add fertilizer, perhaps trim away the dying leaves. But what if the real problem has been hidden beneath the ground all along? No matter how beautiful the branches appear, a poisoned root eventually reveals itself. Human beings often behave the opposite way. We spend years decorating the branches. A better career, a better body, a larger house. More recognition, more followers, more achievements. Yet beneath all those accomplishments, the root quietly waits, ignored not because it isn't important, but because roots are invisible, and human beings have always trusted their eyes more than their awareness. Modern neuroscience offers an interesting parallel. Long before we become consciously aware of many decisions, measurable brain activity has already begun preparing them. The conscious mind often arrives later, creating explanations for choices that deeper processes initiated first. In other words, not everything happening inside you is happening where you can see it. The chapter invites us to extend that observation even further. It suggests that before an imbalance reaches the body, it has often been developing within our emotional and energetic life for a very long time. That may explain something almost everyone has experienced. Stress is invisible. You can't hold it in your hands. Yet enough stress changes your breathing, your heartbeat, your digestion, your sleep. Eventually, your entire body begins speaking a language your conscious mind never learned to recognize. Now imagine that stress is only one example. What if disappointment also leaves traces? What if resentment does? What if years of suppressing your authentic self slowly reshape the way your entire system functions? Suddenly, the body begins to look very different. Not as an enemy, not as a machine randomly breaking down, but as the final page of a story that started long before symptoms appeared. This is where the chapter becomes deeply provocative. It argues that most people are not consciously living their lives. They are repeating them, repeating emotional reactions, repeating fears, repeating inherited beliefs, repeating identities they never consciously chose. Pause for a moment. Who taught you what success means? Who taught you what makes someone lovable? Who taught you what failure looks like? Were those conclusions truly yours? Or did you inherit them so early that they eventually became indistinguishable from your own voice? Perhaps the most dangerous prison isn't built from concrete. Perhaps it's built from unquestioned assumptions. Assumptions so familiar that we mistake them for reality. And if that's true, then the greatest act of healing may have nothing to do with fixing the body. It may begin by questioning the identity that has been living through it all along. And once that question appears, there is no returning to the life you thought you understood. There is no returning to the life you thought you understood. Because once you realize that your experience of reality is filtered by unconscious patterns, an uncomfortable question emerges. If my perception is conditioned, can I trust everything I think? Imagine wearing a pair of glasses since the day you were born. You never take them off. You forget they're even there. The world appears exactly as the lenses allow you to see it. Then one day, someone removes them. For the first time, you discover that reality was never distorted. Only your perception was. Perhaps consciousness works the same way. We don't see life as it is. We see life through accumulated layers of fear, memory, conditioning, and identity. Layer after layer, year after year, until the filter becomes invisible. The chapter describes this process as interference between consciousness and its physical expression. The original impulse remains intact, but as it moves through the emotional and energetic dimensions, it becomes distorted by unresolved experiences, limiting beliefs, and unconscious reactions. Think of a perfectly clear stream flowing down a mountain. The water begins pure, but as it travels, it passes through mud, debris, fallen branches, and polluted ground. By the time it reaches the valley, people assume the water itself is dirty. Yet the source never changed. Only the path did. Perhaps your deepest self has never been broken. Perhaps only the path between your consciousness and your daily life has become clouded. If that's true, then healing is not about creating a new self. It is about clearing the path. This is why external success so often fails to produce inner peace. People climb mountains believing fulfillment waits at the summit, only to arrive carrying the very same mind that suffered at the bottom. Nothing changes, because the traveler never changed. The scenery did. Modern psychology repeatedly demonstrates that unresolved emotional patterns influence perception, relationships, and decision-making long after the original events have passed. The chapter reaches a remarkably similar conclusion through a spiritual lens. It describes recurring energetic patterns that continue expressing themselves until genuine awareness transforms them. Notice something extraordinary. Life rarely repeats events, it repeats lessons, until understanding replaces reaction. How many times have you promised yourself that this relationship would be different, that this year would be different, that this version of you would finally feel complete? Yet months later, you find yourself standing inside another familiar story, not because life enjoys testing you, but because unconscious patterns cannot disappear simply because we wish them away. Awareness comes first, transformation follows. This is why ancient traditions placed such enormous importance on self-observation, not self-judgment, observation. There is a profound difference. Judgment reinforces the personality. Observation reveals it. The moment you can witness your fear without becoming your fear, witness your anger without becoming your anger, witness your thoughts without believing every one of them, something extraordinary happens. For the first time, you discover there is an observer behind the personality, a silent awareness that has been present through every joy, every loss, every success, every failure. It has watched your entire life unfold. Yet most people never notice it, because they are too busy identifying with the voice constantly speaking inside their minds. Perhaps that voice is not your true identity. Perhaps it is only the narrator. And the narrator is not the author. This may be the greatest misunderstanding of the human experience. We spend decades trying to improve the narrator, while completely forgetting the author. The chapter ultimately points toward what it calls reintegration, a return to harmony between consciousness, the energetic dimension, and the physical body. Healing is presented not merely as the disappearance of symptoms, but as the restoration of alignment with our deepest nature. Whether you approach that idea through philosophy, psychology, neuroscience, or spirituality, its practical implication is remarkably similar. Your life changes the moment awareness becomes greater than conditioning. Perhaps that is why Socrates insisted, more than 2,000 years ago, that the unexamined life is not worth living. Not because life without reflection lacks value, but because without awareness, we unknowingly surrender our freedom. The body continues speaking, the mind continues explaining, the personality continues performing, but consciousness patiently waits, not demanding, not forcing, simply waiting for the moment you become quiet enough to hear what has always been there. And maybe that is what true healing has always been. Not escaping pain, not chasing perfection, not becoming someone extraordinary, but remembering the one person you have never actually lost, the deepest self beneath every fear, every identity, every expectation, every mask. So before you leave, ask yourself one final question. If every title you carry disappeared tomorrow, if every role you play vanished, if every belief you inherited fell away, what would remain? Whatever your answer is, that is where your real journey begins. Because perhaps the greatest discovery is not finding a new path. It is realizing that the voice you have been searching for has been quietly speaking from within you all along. The question is no longer whether your consciousness has been calling you. The question is whether, after all these years, you are finally ready to listen.